Alright everybody, are you ready for another album rankings video? This week on album rankings I rank all of Testament's studio albums from worst to best. For this list I will exclude First Strike Still Deadly, mainly because the songs on that one were re-recordings from stuff off their first two albums, The Legacy and The New Order. Testament began as Legacy in 1983 in Berkeley, California, which is east of San Francisco, the birthplace of thrash metal. When Legacy changed their name to Testament in 1986, they became one of the leaders of the second wave of thrash metal bands to come out of San Fran, along with Exodus, Violence, and Forbidden, to name a few. When you're finished watching this video, feel free to subscribe to my channel and look at past album rankings videos, as the playlist is in the description box. Here we go. Let's begin, as the worst Testament record happens to be 1997's Demonic. The album musically and lyrically was very different from their previous records, before this marking a change, deviation away from their thrash roots for a more darker death metal sound, as the record's exorcism theme. I did not like this album at all, and Chuck Billy was trying to sound like George Corpse Grinder Fisher, the lead singer of the American death metal act Cannibal Corpse. The only song heavy enough that stood out was the album opener Demonic Refusal. Next up is 1999's The Gathering. This one continued Testament's transition into death metal, which began on Demonic, but the band brought back its thrash-oriented sound. At least, it's a little better than Demonic. What really helped was the fact that this was like the first, and I believe the only album to feature Slayer's Dave Lombardo, and the first of many to feature bassist Steve DiGiorgio, who was part of the band Death at one point. The Gathering peaked at number 50, somewhere in the top 50 in the German charts, and the standout tracks were like DNR, which stands for Do Not Resuscitate, and Riding the Snake. This record would be the first of many collaborations with engineer and mixer Andy Sneap. Next. In 10th place is Low from 1994. This would be the band's final release for Atlantic Records and their final album for bassist Greg Christian until 2008's formation of Damnation. More on that later. This album would be the first for guitarist James Murphy, who had been in death metal bands such as Death and Obituary. Chuck Billy's vocals started to change a lot on this record, going into a more death metal direction. The standout tracks are Legions, In Hiding, Hail Mary, Trail of Tears, and Dogface Gods. This marks the only Testament album to feature journeyman drummer John Tempesta, who was formerly of the band Exodus. Next. Alright, in 9th place is 2016's Brotherhood of the Snake. This one made it to the top 20 on the Billboard 200, making it the band's second highest charting album in the US, behind the previous record, Dark Roots of Earth. Steve DiGiorgio returned to Testament since 2001's First Strike Still Deadly. The record got generally positive reviews upon its October 2016 release. The standout tracks include Brotherhood of the Snake, The Pale King, and Stronghold. Once more, Andy Sneap did a lot of mastering and mixing for this one. Next, 2012's Dark Roots of Earth takes the 8th spot, featuring the standout tracks True American Hate, Native Blood, Rise Up, and the title track Dark Roots of Earth. The album reached number 12 on the Billboard 200, making it the band's highest US chart position to date. Unfortunately, this would be the last for bassist Greg Christian, as he would leave Testament for the second time, and he would soon be replaced by Steve DiGiorgio. This is also the album which saw Testament reconnect with drummer Gene Hoglan, who played on Demonic. This album has to be Testament's strongest effort since The Ritual, 20 years prior. Taking the 7th spot is Titans of Creation, Testament's most recent release from 2020. While this one didn't reach the heights in the States as its two previous albums, they were still firing on all cylinders. This one made it to number 96 on the Billboard 200, reaching number 5 on the Billboard Top Tastemakers album charts, and number 5 on the Top Hard Rock album charts. Titans of Creation reached the top 10 in the UK metal album charts, and number 3 in Germany. This would be the final Testament album for Gene Hoglan, who would lead the band in January of 2022. The standout tracks include Children of the Next Level, World War III, Curse of Osiris, and Night of the Witch. Next. Coming in at number 6 is The Legacy, the debut album from Testament, released in 1987. You know, Chuck Billy joined the band after singer Steve Zetro Souza left to join Exodus, but Zetro co-wrote a lot of material on this album, with the exception of Curse of the Legions of Death and Do or Die, which were co-written by original Legacy frontman Derek Ramirez and Chuck Billy respectively. Over the last couple of years, Loudwire has put this album over, when in 2016 it was ranked first as the band's best, and in 2020 it was on their list of best thrash debuts of all time. Over the Wall, The Haunting, First Strike is Deadly, and Alone in the Dark are standout tracks for Testament's debut release. 1989's Practice What You Preach takes the 5th spot on this list. Released in August of 89, I went on record stating that this album was the most underrated metal album of 1989, and when I did a video on the most underrated metal albums of that year, this one was ranked number 1. Practice What You Preach reached number 77 on the Billboard 200, and it features the standout tracks like Greenhouse Effect, Perilous Nation, The Ballad, and the title track, Practice What You Preach. Next. Taking the 4th spot is The Formation of Damnation from 2008. This one marked the return of 4/5 of the classic Testament lineup, as Alex Skolnick returned 16 years after The Ritual, and Greg Christian returned 14 years after Low. It also is the only studio album to feature drummer Paul Bostaph, who had been a drummer of thrash bands like Slayer and Forbidden. The Formation of Damnation was well received, reaching number 59 on the Billboard 200, and it won Best Album at the Metal Hammer Golden God Awards later that year. More Than Meets the Eye, Henchman Ride, The Evil Has Landed, and the title track are all standouts. Next. In 3rd place is 1990's Souls of Black. Souls of Black saw the band continuing in the vein of similar to Practice What You Preach, with its lyrics dealing with society, religion, politics, suicide, and warfare. It reached number 73 on the Billboard 200. The title track Souls of Black, Face in the Sky, and The Legacy were all standout tracks on this album. Next. The runner-up happens to be 1988's The New Order. This album broke Testament into the thrash metal mainstream, backed by the single Trial by Fire. Even though standout tracks like Disciples of the Watch, Into the Pit, The Preacher, and their cover of Aerosmith's Nobody's Fault, along with the title track The New Order, were great to listen to. Still a notch higher than Souls of Black. In 2016, Loudwire ranked this album as Testament's second best behind The Legacy. And the best Testament record, in my opinion, happens to be 1992's The Ritual. This was the album, in my opinion, that they matured a lot when they began to explore a slower and more melodic approach while they still maintained their thrash metal roots. The Ritual reached number 55 on the Billboard 200. The Ritual would be the band's final album to feature drummer Louis Clemente and guitarist Alex Skolnick. However, Skolnick would return in 2005, and 3 years later he appeared on the Formation of Damnation record. The Ritual returned to Serenity, So Many Lies, and my all-time favorite Testament song, Electric Crown, all standout songs from this album, and it's a crying shame that this album really didn't go gold. Here is a quick recap of Testament's studio albums from worst to best. While I didn't care too much for Demonic, The Gathering was a much better record, and in retrospect, an underrated album. Low saw Testament transition from thrash to more of a death metal sound, while albums like Brotherhood of the Snake and Dark Roots of Earth landed Testament their only albums to reach the top 20 on the Billboard 200. We have yet to see the follow-up of Titans of Creation, but as it stands, that album remains in 7th place. The Formation of Damnation saw Alex and Greg reunite with Chuck Billy and Eric Peterson, and it was met with success. Souls of Black is an underrated metal album of 1990. The New Order is by far one of their best works, and The Ritual, say what you want, but this is arguably, in my opinion, their best album. This has been Joe Lum's album rankings for this Sunday.
No.